Today we're talking about the Nike Zoom Fly 3 after 100 miles. 17.58 miles, 7 minutes, 30 seconds per mile today, running a long run with 10 by 1 mile surges. An absolutely brutal workout. I had a really hard time keeping it together. Things kind of started to unravel towards the end, but I got the workout done, and ultimately the goals of the workout, which are to run a long distance and put lots of hard efforts towards the end, definitely accomplished. And with today's miles, I got over the 100 mile mark in the Zoom Fly 3. But before I get into my thoughts on this shoe, and I have a lot to say about it, I do want to go over some disclosures. I have been working with Nike, training with them for the Chicago Marathon, getting support from them. This is a pair of shoes that I did buy with my own money. They're not paying me to wear the shoe, to make this review, to make this video. They don't know that I'm making this review video, and no one's going to get a chance to preview my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see it on YouTube. Now, with the disclosures out of the way, I want to talk about the Zoom Fly 3. Normally when I do a 100 mile review, it's pretty much, my thoughts don't change too much. And that's why I feel pretty comfortable doing the kind of the first run videos. Is for me in 2019, I don't think shoes really need a ton of break-in. I don't think shoes really change all that much over time. But mainly the things that I focus on are wear and tear, has the character of the shoe kind of, or the excitingness of the shoe degraded over the miles, and how's like the outsole holding up, how's the midsole foam holding up, those kinds of things. But this one is really different. I almost didn't make it to 100 miles in this shoe, and it's very, very strange, and I'll talk more about it. But before I get into that, I will go over some of the wear and tear normal issues. This is a white pair of shoes, which at the beginning, a lot of you guys were like, oh, I love the way that shoe looks, but I can never wear white because it would get too dirty. And I've been like, it'll be fine. It's actually not fine. The white part of this shoe has yellowed considerably, and it's not because I took it on dirt roads or anything like that, which sometimes I do have a chance to do, but it just seems like this has discolored. So everything is kind of like a yellowish, like tannish tint on the parts that are the vapor weave white. You can see on some of those rubber parts here that this is what the white originally looked like, so you get a sense of the difference. Or if you look at kind of on the heel or on the white React foam, what that white originally looked like, but underneath it's discoloring. And that's because I think that a lot of this does have vapor weave on it, and it's advertised as having vapor weave, but it's kind of like not vapor weave everywhere, or there is vapor weave on it, but it's an outer layer, almost like a veneer to what's underneath, which is mesh and kind of like neoprene material. So you've got that like sock-like or boot construction that's going on in the shoe, which was very comfortable. But there's two layers of material, and for me what's been happening is water's been getting in there because I get the shoes wet all the time, or sweat's been getting in there, and it evaporates from the vapor weave, but it doesn't seem to evaporate all that quickly from the other materials that are in here. For example, it's the following morning from that run footage that you just saw, and all this material, the padding on the heel cup and all the material that's back here, still a little bit damp, and everything inside the shoe still feeling damp in there as well. So it's not the quickest drying shoe that I thought it would be. Water is getting in there, and when I get a lot of water in there, it certainly drains out, but it retains a little bit of moisture. And for example, on the run that I did with SJD when he came into town, he put me through some of the water. Not he put me through, I wanted to run through a lot of water to kind of just show off a little bit. And by the end of our run, which I think we ran like 8 or 9 miles that day, he was mentioning that he could still hear the squish in my shoes. And yeah, definitely something that happens today as well. I tried to avoid a little bit of the water today because I knew it was going to be a longer run, a lot of harder efforts. But from the sweat dripping down my leg and getting into the shoe, I could definitely hear some squishiness in there. So the vapor weave, I think the vapor weave is evaporating fine. It's just this other stuff that's in here, which is retaining a lot of moisture. So that's been disappointing. And I also think that's been the cause of the discoloration. Granted, the material that was inside, the neoprene was white, but the mesh was an off-white color, like a different color to begin with. And I'll post some footage from the first run video where I have some B-roll of the shoe before I ever wore it, so you get a sense of maybe what those differences are. But there's been a definite significant discoloration of the shoe. Maybe if you're not running in as much water as I am, you won't have that problem. But I've also noted that there's stuff that's getting in between the two layers of the material that's in here. And I don't know if that's coming in through these lace eyelets here where the mesh kind of cage kind of pokes out through the top of the shoe. I'm not sure if that's how it's getting in or if it's getting from the inside in there and just having a hard time coming out. I don't know how it's getting in there, but there's kind of like grit and stuff in there that is definitely visible from the outside. So from a visual perspective, I still think it's a beautiful shoe, and when you're running fast, no one's going to really notice any of those things. But for those of you that are particular about color of the shoe and how it wears over time, that's something to keep in mind. But in terms of the actual functional parts of the shoe, other than the aesthetics of the upper, but going to the actual parts where the rubber hits the road, the rubber is holding up fantastic. There's ample coverage of all the places that will hit, but the React foam looks really good. The midsole, the midfoot and forefoot look great. They look like they're relatively new. The only one place of wear, and this is where I normally get most of my wear, is on the right back part of the heel over here. And so I am seeing some wear there. A lot of these grooves are starting to wear down. So at 100 miles, that's starting to wear thin. And right at the edge where it meets the React foam, that part of the rubber is really thin. And so there is quite a bit of wear here, and you can compare it to kind of the other side to see just how much it wore. But yeah, there is a substantial amount of wear in just that one little spot. But also, that's where Nike put the rubber on the outsole, and so it's protecting the React midsole foam. In terms of the React holding up though, it's just as responsive as it was when I first got it. So it still feels, in terms of underfoot, like a brand new shoe. It doesn't feel like a 100-mile shoe that's in there. It's one of the crazy things about React foam. It just lasts forever somehow. I don't know how it does it. But the other thing that I'll talk about with the React foam in this shoe is that I mentioned in my first impressions video, is that this Zoomfly versus the Vaporfly Next, I feel like it bridges the gap, or it's as close to the Vaporfly as a Vaporfly has ever been. This year's Vaporfly though, the Next percent, it's a little bit bouncier of a material than the Zoom X in the Vaporfly 4%. And so this Zoomfly 3 is also a little bit bouncier than the Zoomfly 2, because the Zoomfly Flyknit or Zoomfly 2 keyed off of the Vaporfly 4%. This one is keying off of the Vaporfly Next percent. So it's a little bit bouncier. And what it ends up doing for me is, and I don't know if that extra bounciness is something that they've tinkered with the React formula, or if it's just that it's a thicker stack height. And I don't know if it's actually technically a thicker stack height, but it just feels like there's much more midsole underneath you. It actually starts to remind me of the performance of the original Zoomflies, the Zoomfly version 1 or the Zoomfly SPs that had Lunarlon and the carbon infused nylon plate. The feeling underfoot, how it feels when your foot hits the ground, definitely reminds me of that Lunarlon sensation. So I remember saying when I ran in the Zoomfly Flyknit that I preferred the feeling of the React foam and the carbon fiber plate substantially over the feeling of the Zoomfly 1 and the Lunarlon. And I think that that's starting to apply here over miles. While this definitely does remind me a lot of the Vaporfly Next percent, it has some shortcomings that make it more similar to the Zoomfly SP or the Zoomfly version 1, which was not a bad shoe. It was a great shoe. But I think that I don't like this one quite as much as the Zoom Fly Flyknit. And that ties into like the main problems that I had with this shoe, which were almost deal breakers for me. At about the 60-mile mark, it got to the point where I didn't think I'd be able to make it to 100 miles in this shoe. I started switching it up. I had that pain in my foot, which last year I had what a lot of people, I described it to you guys, and a lot of you guys thought it was like a Morton's neuroma, a sharp pain underneath like kind of the center of my foot, not quite the ball of my foot, but more towards the center of it, underneath like kind of like the middle toe, but in the pad area. And this time I got it on the right side. It started out as a hot spot in this shoe that I would get right around kind of the 5 or 6 mile mark in a run. It changed and turned into a definite pain point that would happen almost every run at about the 4 mile mark, and it got really, really intense. At about 60 miles into the shoe, I started wearing thicker socks, thinking, well, maybe that'll help. And it helped a little bit. The pain was still there, but it wasn't unbearable at that point. So at that point, what I had to do was either I had to stop running in the shoe, and I definitely thought about having a review of this shoe at the 75 mile mark, or I had one last resort. I took out the stock insole, which is very thin, probably just a little bit of cushion, and I replaced it with this insole that I previously described as something that was superfluous and unnecessary. But it was kind of expensive. I think it was like $80 or something that I got at Roadrunner Sports. And I decided I would hold on to it just because there was no reason to throw it away. It doesn't take up that much space. So I held on to it, put these in. They have quite a bit of arch support, and there's a little bit of extra padding up in the forefoot. Putting these insoles into the shoe rescued this shoe for me. And so from then on, it was almost the same shoe that I had been so excited about when I first got this shoe, but now I actually could run long distances with it. And for me, the way that this shoe fits into the lineup is I like it as the long, fast shoe. So longer distances, faster paces. That's when I'm going to look for a Zoom Fly 3. And now I could get past kind of the 4 mile mark without it hurting. So for today's run, the 17.5 mile run, I didn't notice it at all. So it was just a shoe that I could run with. I felt that strong push off that I'm getting from the carbon fiber plate. I was getting the nice responsiveness from the midsole of the React foam, and it really felt great when I was trying to get so powerful strides on those longer runs, especially during those surge miles. It felt absolutely great. Now, when you put that insert into this shoe, it does take up a little bit of volume on the shoe, but I also think that this shoe fit a little bit bigger than the Flyknit version from last year. So while it felt a little bit more snug, it wasn't a problem at all. The main thing that I noticed was the amount of heel kind of insole that is in this insole that I have made it so I felt I was standing a little taller inside the shoe here, and so I felt like my ankle was kind of like poking out of the back. So definitely felt a little bit of heel slippage. I felt like I wouldn't feel great if I was going on a race course with a lot of switchbacks and very tight turns. I did have some tight turns and it wasn't a problem, but as I was running in it, it felt like it was going to be a problem. So it made me feel a little bit less secure in the way that this shoe was fitting on my foot. The laces are really long on it though. Both this and the Turbo 2 this year, the laces seem to be like 1 inch too long on each side. So 2 inches too long for the laces. So definitely if the heel slippage is something that's a concern for you, you could do the runner's loop and use the extra eyelets. I didn't use that for any of my runs, and I ended up being fine. I did notice it, but it was ultimately fine. So that's the big caveat for me for this shoe. I've been talking with a lot of you guys over the course of the past couple of weeks in regards to this particular shoe. And some of you have mentioned hot spots, but none of you have mentioned that it's really bad. So maybe I have something that's like a subclinical neuroma going on, where there's something about this particular shoe that's exacerbating it. Or maybe it's something that is something going on with this shoe that's a problem that I'm noticing maybe before you guys get to there. But it's something that was a problem for me, and the only way that I could turn this shoe from an unrunnable, an unfortunate, beautiful shoe that I can't run in to something that I could definitely pound out some miles in was that insole. So whether that is just due to the padding, arch support, or something else, that was something that was a big problem for me, but a fixable problem, fortunately. Now, I'm not going to recommend this shoe because of that issue that I ran into. And I think that buying a shoe saying it's great if you buy an $80 insole as well just doesn't make sense. And that ultimately gets me to like kind of my final thoughts and my who's this shoe for. Because I've also got comments and questions from you guys that are like, I use the Turbo 2 as my daily trainer, and I have the Vaporfly for my races and my long runs. So what do I need this shoe for? I don't think that in that situation, with the existence of both the Vaporfly 4% and the Vaporfly Next, I don't think that a lot of people need this shoe. And I think this shoe is great for people that are racing like half marathon length distances or marathon distances and don't want to get up to the Vaporfly 4% or the Vaporfly Next. If I think that you are keeping those out of your consideration, then I think the Zoomfly 3 is kind of like the top of the Nike lineup for you. Keeping in mind that I had some hotspot issues that turned into pain points for me. So it's something that you want to be a little bit concerned about, something that you want to look out for. Are you feeling that hotspot early? Maybe it just stays as a hotspot. I've had Nike Epic React shoes that start out as hotspots and it stays as hotspots, and after about 100 miles, the hotspot goes away. So it doesn't always translate into pain. I also ran in the Nike Pegasus 35 Shields this winter, and I had a very similar hotspot issue, even though that doesn't have React foam or a carbon fiber plate in it, but it was in my left foot. So that was a shoe that was also strange for me. So it's not every Nike shoe, it's not every React foam shoe. It's just particular shoes for reasons that I haven't quite nailed down yet. But this is something that happened in this shoe. $160 retail for the Zoomfly 3. I think that you're getting a really good value for the dollar, especially if you aren't affected by the issues that I had. And a lot of you guys aren't. And so I don't think this is a widespread problem. If it is, if it's something that you've experienced beyond just hotspots, let me know in the comments. I'd definitely like to collect more information on that to see if this is something that's just happening to me and maybe I've got something going on my foot that I got to get checked out, or maybe there's something about the shoe that's a problem. Now, before I go, I want to talk about a new charity runner for this week. This week it's David Sachs, who's going to be running the Marine Corps Marathon, and he's going to be raising money for Interval. I've been happy to donate $70 to David's fundraising efforts, and I'll post links in the description in case you'd like to learn more. Thanks so much for making it to the end of this video, everybody, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?